So feel free to take it away, Mulshankar.
Yeah, thank you, David. So, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time wherever you are. I am Mulshankar Kothari, co-organizer of Hyperledger Dubai and Abu Dhabi meetups groups. Thank you everyone for joining the webinar, and a special thanks to Hitarshi for sharing the insights on building trust ecosystem powered by verifiable credentials. In the end, we will have Q&A session. Feel free to unmute yourself and you can type your questions in the chat, and I will try to ask the questions from the Hitarshi. So without the further ado, let's hand over the virtual stage to Hitarshi. Over to you.
Thank you, Mool. Hi, everyone. This is Hitarshi. I'm part of the Lab 45, office of CTO in Wipro, and I'm working as a chief architect for the DICE ID platform. Right. So today I'm going to talk about what DICE ID is, right, and introduce some concepts and also talk about certain use cases, what the work we have done so far, right, and show you a quick demo as well, right, of the DICE ID platform. Right. So before we start talking about what DICE ID is, I would like to spend some time in understanding the concept of credentials, right? So uh, credentials is something which we use in our daily lives, right, to prove our identity, to prove our eligibility, right, to prove our capabilities, right? So 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 that's what we call it as a credential, which is something that will help you prove your identity or capability. Credentials generally, when we think username password, but no, it's not as restricted to that, right? It is much more than that. So few examples of credentials could be your driver's license, right, which proves that you are eligible to drive in a city or a country, right? Your KYC as a credential proves your eligibility to, apply for a loan, right? Your skill as a credential helps you apply for a job or higher studies, right? So these are all examples of credentials, and we use them in a physical or digital format in our lives. And there are certain challenges associated with these credentials, right? One is that there is a dependency on the issuer of the credential, right? So for example, if your university has uh, given you a degree certificate, then the ideal way to verify it is to go to them and ask for a validation, right, from them, right, so there is a dependency with the issuer, which can be a bottleneck, right? Physical credentials and to some extent digital credentials also, there is a huge problem of it getting tampered, right? So we have so many cases of fake certificates and different kind of ID documents floating around, right? Because it is now so easy to tamper with them, right? So that is another problem, right? And even if the credentials are in a digital format, right? So they are not easy to integrate with or easy to read, right? You need to have OCR kind of or screen scraping kind of uh, mechanism to be able to read the data from it and then use it with your application, right? So there are multiple challenges with credentials, right? So what if one of the aspects of credentials is that what if it was verifiable, right? Just like this currency note that we see here, right? So a currency note by itself, is having certain attributes like a watermark or the ribbon, etc., which makes it verifiable, right? So if somebody hands a currency note to you and you are aware of these different attributes, you can pretty much figure out without contacting the issuer, meaning the government or agency who has minted this note, right? So without contacting them, you are able to figure out whether this currency note is real or fake, right? So it makes the currency note verifiable. Similarly, if the credentials can also be made verifiable, that's when it can, lead to solving many of the challenges mentioned earlier, right? So with that, I'll introduce DICE ID platform. So DICE ID is a platform which helps organizations issue and verify tamper-proof digital credentials, right? It is a blockchain-based platform, right? And I'll talk about how it works. So before I do that, I'll like to introduce the three main actors in this construct, right? In DICE ID, right? So the first one is the credential holder, right? So credential holder is a user or an entity, or it could be a machine or device who has an identity and who can have multiple type of credentials, right? So I gave some examples of credentials like a driver's license or a KYC or your skill, right? So these are different type of credentials that you are having, and now with DICE ID you can have it in a digital format stored in your identity wallet, right? So this identity wallet is typically something which resides on your device, on your phone, and we have a DICE ID mobile app available on Android and iOS Play stores, where it acts as an identity wallet which can help you manage your credentials of any type, right? So that's what. So the credential holder will have multiple credentials. How will they get the credential, right? So that's where credential issuer comes into picture. So credential issuer is an entity or an organization which knows something about the credential holder, right? For example, if you have a bank account, the bank knows something about you. If you have completed a course with a university or a degree with a university, the university knows that something about you and the fact that you completed your degree, right? And on basis of that, it is able to issue you a credential, right? So these are the credential issuing organizations which get onboarded into DICE ID ecosystem after we do our due diligence and their KYC, right? So we know that it is a valid entity issuing the credential and not some random issuer who has started issuing the credential, right? Because that is very important for the sanctity of the ecosystem. Now, when they are issuing the credential, unlike other typical blockchain solutions, there is no confidential or PII data stored on blockchain, right? So blockchain network here only contains who the issuer is, meaning the public key of the issuer, and what kind of credential they have issued, right? So basically, it only stores the metadata or the schema of the credential, which says that, okay, this credential is supposed to have so many attributes of so and so data types, and it is going to be issued by credentials are going to be issued by this particular organization, right? That's the only thing which is there on blockchain network, and the rest of PI data is never ever on blockchain, right? So the chances of data leakage, security threats gets minimized a lot, right? So these credentials are issued over over a secure channel from the issuer to the credential holder, right? And the credential holder receives these credentials in their identity wallet, right, which I mentioned earlier, right? And once they receive these credentials in the wallet, right, that's where now what do? You have your credentials, you want to use it, right? You want to use it to prove your identity or capability. So that's where the credential holder will submit these credentials as a proof to the third stakeholder in the ecosystem, which is the proof verifier, right? So these are organizations, third parties who want to know something about the end user. They want to know whether this person is a real user person or they have the eligibility to access their product or services. So these verifying organizations basically accept the proof that is submitted by the credential holder, right? And they are able to verify that proof, validate that proof without contacting the issuer, right? So as you can see in this diagram, there is no direct communication between the verifier and the credential issuer, right? So both are decoupled, And the verifier can simply rely on the cryptographic proof which is available on blockchain, right? So through that, it can find out who issued the credential and whether each and every attribute of the credential is valid or not, right? Because they are able to verify the signature, right? So that's how they are able to instantly verify the proof that is submitted. And once they validated the proof, then since the credential holder has consented to submit their details, along with embedded in the proof, they are able to extract this information, and this information is machine readable, so they can integrate it with the downstream systems, right? So that's how, with multiple issuers and verifiers in the DICE ID ecosystem, that's where the trust is being established between the all the multiple parties, and all the credential exchange is happening via the credential holder, right? So here the credential holder is at the center, in the sense that they control who the credentials will go to, right? So that's where the self-sovereignty part comes into picture. Our DICE ID platform is built on, W3C specifications, right? And that, in terms of tech stack, we have built this on top of Hyperledger, Aries, and Indy, right? So the blockchain network is, uh, built on Hyperledger Indy nodes, right? And we have, we are using Hyperledger Aries for the agent, the different agents, right? So the agents here have a critical, functionality, as it enables the secure, communication between the issuer and holder, as well as the holder and the verifier, right? So uh, the underlying protocol is what they enforce to ensure secure communication and exchange of messages, right, between the stakeholders. And on top of it, we have built our API layer, controller API, DICE ID API layer, which enables organizations to easily use this functionality. And we also have provided a self-service console through which they can get onboarded and set up their organization, their departments, their users, as well as issue credentials in real time in batch mode, as well as set up templates for verification. So I'll briefly show you how that looks like, right? For organizations who want to do integration, we provide SDKs and APIs, which are easy to integrate with, right? And we have a mobile app, as I said, which acts as the wallet for the credential holder, with an option of a cloud wallet as well, right? Because certain use cases will require a cloud wallet, even though the wallet is for the credential holder, right? So yeah, I mentioned self-sovereignty. Selective disclosure is one of the out-of-the-box functionalities where the credential holder can decide what part of their credential they want to submit as proof, right? So for example, if you are entering a bar, you don't need to show your entire identity card, right? All you need to prove is that you are above 18 or 21, and your photograph matches yourself, right? So that is good enough. You don't have to reveal your blood group or address or many other details that are typically there on our ID cards, right? So that's selective disclosure. We have flexible deployment options. So this setup is available as a SaaS, for organizations who want to simply integrate with the issuing or verifying APIs, right? And if somebody wants to host Indy node and have the entire setup done at their end, that is also something which we provide, right? So that's DICE ID for you. And talking about use cases, since it is a technology platform which on which any type of credential can be issued, there are multiple use cases that can be supported on top of it, right? I mentioned about KYC, right? Similarly, for a bank in South Africa, we did a project where, citizens were issued credentials so that they could prove their eligibility to avail benefits, right? For example, low income groups and all. So those kind of credentials can also be issued. I'll talk about skill skill-based credentials in detail as one of the case study. And this can be extended to devices also, right? For example, for a for a petroleum oil and gas major in Europe. So they are implementing a use case on asset lifecycle management for their devices, right? So each device is provided an identity, and as it traverses through the life cycle, credentials, it will have credentials to prove whether it was manufactured properly, whether inspection was done or not, whether it was installed or not, whether it is ready for use. So those kind of important milestones is something which are captured as credentials, right? And since this is a Web 3.0 compliant architecture, so obviously those use cases also apply, right? For example, credentials could represent different avatars, right? So if you are in a gamer, one avatar of yourself could represent your gaming avatar, while the other one could be a shopping avatar, right? So that's how credentials can be used for multiple purposes, right? And now coming to the case study, that we have implemented in India, right? So we have set up a national infrastructure for skill-based credentials, right? So we have built an ecosystem of 120 organizations, right? And some of the logos are seen below here. These are some of the large organizations. So our ecosystem basically comprises of, training institutes, assessment agencies, right, who train their users and they issue skill-based credentials to their users, right? And once they issue these credentials, on the other side, we have, job portals, recruiters who would want to verify these skill-based credentials and shortlist the candidates for interview process, in the hiring process, right? So we have this ecosystem built, and we have standardized the skill credentials by working with NASSCOM, right, which is and the standards which are prescribed by National Skill Qualification Framework in India, and using those standard credentials, the credentials are being issued to the end users, and as you can see, we have clocked 1.2 million transactions till now, right? And uh, by establishing a working group, right, we have ensured that everybody is aware of what the skill-based credential standard is, and we are helping them with the adoption, right? So this is something which we have rolled out in the past year, and it is one of our success stories, right? So likewise, so the power, what I would like to stress here is that the power of DICE ID and a verifiable credential platform like this is in the ecosystem, right? Because it helps exchange of credentials between multiple parties, and they can rely on the on blockchain and the way credentials are being exchanged, to establish the trust, right? So there is no point-to-point integration required between these multiple parties, and through that they can enable multiple use cases. But if it is a use case which is confined to one enterprise only, then it DICE ID may not be of a great value add, because there are other alternate technology options available, right, to solve those kind of problems. All right. So now I would like to go a little further ahead on the concepts, right, that we are going to talk about, and I'm going to show in the demo as well, right? So there are two main aspects when we talk about DICE ID and and the verifiable credentials. One is schema, and the other is verification template, right? So any credential that needs to be issued has to be based on a schema, right? And the schema is something which the credential issuer can decide. They can construct their own. So that this is something configurable. So they decide the structure and format of the verifiable credential and record it on blockchain, right? So the rest of the participants in the ecosystem know that, okay, any credential that comes has to adhere to this schema, right? So it is not only the fact that it is a valid schema, but also it helps in, making the schema semantically interoperable, right? So because if I know that organization one has published a schema, right, which has so such and such attributes named in a particular way, then we know that as a verifying organization, I can use this set of attributes, right, to basically read the credential and figure out whether it is valid or not, right? So that is the schema which the credential issuer manages. And once the schema is decided, then the verifying organization will set up a verification template, right? So the verification template basically is the question that the verifier wants to ask the credential holder, right? So it would ask that, do you have these set of attributes, right, with you to prove that your identity or capability, right? So the verification template would have those attributes. It would also define the validation criteria, right? So whether the verifier is ready to accept credentials from only one issuer or all issuers only, or only a specific set of issuers, right? Whose information or DID is available on blockchain. So that is also something which they can decide, right? And it helps in establishing the trust because they know what kind of attributes they are going to receive and how they are going to validate it, right? So these two are important constructs in DICE ID platform, which once in place can enable the issuance and verification functionality, right? So if we talk about credential exchange, what is also important is that the credential exchange should be a standardized one, right? So it should follow standard vocabulary, right? So that no matter which credential issuer is issuing the credential, it can be understood by the verifier, right? So while at a high level, we can say that credential exchange happens, but when we talk about the specific attributes, for example, in this example, so this is a screenshot of the DICE ID app where, the different attributes of the skill credentials like course, percentage, category, etc. has been defined. So unless we define a schema with a standard set of attributes or vocabulary, the rest of the ecosystem will, have a hard time figuring out or understanding what it is, right? So it is important to standardize that. So while building the ecosystem, we also established the industry working group and, to educate all the organizations that why this standardization is important, right? As the credentials get issued from the issuer and are received by the holder and then submitted by the holder to the verifier as proof, right? So that's why standardization is important. All right. So now with the next thing that I would like to cover is a demo, right? So I'll take a use case of verified profile, right? So before I do that, since we spoke about schema and verification template and those concepts, I'll quickly show you what our platform console looks like, right? So just give me a sec. All right. So this is our DICE ID console, right? So so any organization that gets onboarded will have access to this DICE ID console, right? And as you can see, there are multiple tabs on the left. So and the functionality is for creating a schema, right? So the schema can be created and have as many attributes that you want, and it is something which is configurable, right? So there is no restriction as to how many attributes you can have and what all data types you can use, right? So we have multiple data set types. So once the schema is defined, then the issuance can be done in real time or it can be done in batch issuance mode, right? So I am currently showing you the tenant for Wipro. So Wipro Talent Next uses this particular tenant. So it's a multi-tenant application portal, right? So as you can see, so we have been, issuing credentials to our, employees on Gen AI and many other skills, right? Just like schemas, verification templates is also something which can be defined, right? And based on that, the verification functionality can be set up, and the organization can set up their departments, their users. Each organization will have a subscription, right? And certain number of tokens that they would consume, right? And along with that, we provide, organizations to set up their SMTP. If they are willing to integrate, then they can, set up their callback, right? And for API access, they can get their keys, etc. Right? So it's a full-blown, console which helps organizations get onboarded and access the functionality. This, along with, our self-help tutorials, are used by them, right? So now coming back to the deck, so let's talk about this use case, right? So now Maya here is a, professional, right? And she is looking for a better opportunity, right? So now, she could simply go job hunting and apply at multiple places and hope for the best, right? But with the power of verifiable credentials, what she can do is that since she has completed her education, she has a valid identity, and she also has acquired certain skills, right? She can get those credentials from the different credential issuers, right? So when I spoke about the ecosystem can comprise of a variety of credential issuers. For example, it could be a government department, a college, previous employers who can, issue work-based, experience-based credentials, and edtechs who issue credentials for professional courses. So with these variety of issuers issuing Maya the different credentials, she will have those credentials in her wallet, right? And once she has them in the wallet, she can submit those credentials as a proof of the fact that she has, to prove her identity, her qualification, right, her experience, all of that in one shot to the recruiters and job portals, and create a verified profile, right? Because right now there are many profiles that exist, but a lot of time and effort goes in even figuring out whether this is a valid profile or not, and whether each part or each section of that profile is, genuine or real or not, right? So through this mechanism, when the credentials are submitted to the recruiters, it gets instantly verified, and Maya's verified profile gets created, which ranks her higher in the job listings, or it can accelerate her job hunt in finding the right kind of opportunity, right? So now let's look at one demo here, right? So here, uh, basically, just give me a second. Some problem with the pointer. Okay. So here, as you can see, there is the dashboard, right, where we can issue a credential, right? So let's say Maya is being issued a credential from her educational institute, right? The college from where she completed the degree. So the issuer is selecting the relevant schema, right? Educational schema, and all the details related to her degree certificate are being populated here. So this is being done manually, but it can be done via API integration as well. Once the details have been, filled out, now, the notification method of how, Maya will receive her credential is something which is, needs to be provided, right? So a valid email address along with, an email template can also be specified to make the message contextual. So once, the onboard is clicked, Maya will receive a notification, an email saying that she's received a credential, right? So the issue will also get notified. So now Maya checks her email and she finds that she has received a email, right? So she has to download DICE ID app, and then there is a QR code that needs to be scanned for her to receive a credential, right? So once she scans the QR code, a secure connection is established between her device and the issuer, and the credentials gets downloaded on her app, right, on her DICE ID app. So as you can see, she got her BTech education credential with all the details, which she is able to access. Right now that she has got the credential, she also had other type of credentials like PMP, Java certification, her previous experience credentials, identity credentials, right? So that's what she is going to submit to the verifier, right? So let's say she is applying for a job search, with a, new age placements, right? So she visits the portal of new age placements right here, right? And as you can see, she gets a QR code. So this QR code is based on the verification template, right? Which is asking Maya to submit certain credentials, right? So she scans the QR code, right? And if matching credentials are found in her wallet, as you can see, there are multiple credentials that are matching the requirement. She is able to submit. So by submitting, she is providing her consent, right? And once the credential has been submitted, it gets verified against blockchain, and the details are something which are available for the recruiter to see, and that this is how our verified profile gets created, right? As you can see, our identity, education, work experience, professional qualifications, all of that got verified instantly and is available to create our profile, right? So with this kind of verified profile, basically, the entire hiring process for Maya can be, uh, you know, fastened, and she doesn't have to go through the normal grind, right, of finding the right opportunity, because all of these, this information has been issued by valid organizations, and it is verified, right? So the verifier knows that none of this information has been tampered with. All right. So that was the demo. And from a DICE ID perspective, what we are doing is, now that we have the technology platform, now we are now doing a vertical expansion and building BGV capabilities in our platform, so that across the globe, to support a verified profile kind of use case, or any other detailed BGV check done as part of hiring process can be supported through automation, and by using the BGV capabilities, right? So that's what we are working on, and we obviously are engaging our enterprise customers, so that DICE ID, if they want to white label and implement use cases like asset lifecycle management, right? And all, so they can do that. And we would also like to expand the skill credentials ecosystem, since it is a success story in India. We would want to expand to different geos, like starting with Middle East, right? So that's our next plan of action. And if you want
Before
to
you
know
move,
more,
Hitarshi, there is
sorry.
a one question, I think, regarding previously, right? People are asking what BGV stands for. So if you could please.
BGV is background verification, right? So whenever you get hire, there is a pre-hiring and hiring cycle, right? So there are different level of BGV checks that happen, right? Right from checking identity, education, employment history, right? Address check, criminal records check, right? Health checks, which obviously has to happen offline. But for all the other checks, we are integrating with the data source providers, so that the checks can happen as fast as possible, and we can make the whole BGV check during the hiring cycle much more faster and cheaper, right? And based on that, we can issue those credentials, right? So yeah, one is that our ecosystem partners can issue those credentials, but we are also building those capabilities, so that for any candidate being hired by an organization, the background verification can be done.
What do you mean provided by third-party providers? I believe that you somehow interact with third-party provider that as well can verify certain credentials like health, identity, or something like that, right?
Correct. Right. So yeah, obviously we have to integrate. For example, in India we have DigiLocker and API Setu, right? These are government provided APIs through which we can validate the identity, of a person. We can validate their employment. We can validate the educational degrees, right? Which are available in DigiLocker. So likewise, we are identifying, or we have identified certain data source providers, in India and outside India as well, so that, for example, in Dubai, Emirates ID, is something which we can validate using APIs, right? So once that has been validated, then based on that validation, we issue a credential, which can then be verified multiple times, right? Because once a credential has been issued, then that credential can be verified n number of times without going back to the data source.
So your role is to keep it secured in the blockchain, but not the validation itself, right? Because the validation itself of given credential, I mean real credential, like driver license, anything like that, is done by a third-party player, and your role is just to keep it and to provide all these digital identity capabilities, right? On top of it.
Yeah. So our
Okay.
job is to provide the technology platform, right? So the credential issuer, for example, driver's license, right? Here, the DMV or the RTO or whoever is issuing the credential, the driver's license, will be the agency who will issue the credential, right? Or if they have outsourced that work to somebody, then that agency will issue the credential, and the verifier would know that who has issued the credential and what was the metadata of the credential, right? So based on that, they are able to validate, right? So as DICE ID as a platform, currently we don't validate the data within the credential because we know that we have valid issuers onboarded on our network, right? So no, we don't allow just anybody to become an issuing organization on
Got it.
yeah.
So DMV, for instance, can onboard on your platform and
Yes.
become a valid issuer. Okay.
Correct. Exactly.
Thank you.
Right.
What does it take to partner with you to become one of those credential organizations?
Sorry, I am not able to. Maybe I'll have to increase my volume. Can you please repeat?
If I want to become one of the credential organizations that can issue credentials, what's the process? How much work is that to partner?
Right. So basically, if you want to get onboarded, there is a bilateral agreement that needs to get signed with Wipro and your organization, right? And as part of that, we would know what kind of credential you want to issue, right? Whether you are yours is a valid entity, right? In whichever geography, and based on that, once that agreement is digitally signed by both parties, then we will create a account first in our testnet, right? As for your development testing, and then move you to the mainnet, right? So that is something which is we can do for you, right? So the skill credentialing ecosystem of 120 organizations that we have established, right? So with each one of those 120 organizations, we signed an agreement, and they understood what DICE ID is, we understood what they do, right? And based on that, they got onboarded.
Do you have an API, for instance, if I want to check someone's driver license and he's like, for instance, let's say a DMV joined your organization, and probably API side of things still has to be on your end, right? Because if I want to like to verify someone that it has like he has some kind of driver license, I still have to interact with your API, right? Because DMV obviously can't have its own API like deployed on their service because they don't have one, right? So it has to go through your platform again.
Right, right. So let's assume that, DMV has issued a credential, on DICE ID, right? And a user
And I
has
want to
that.
use it as a third-party player. I want to verify
Yeah, yeah.
that this
So as a
guy,
verifier, correct. As a verifier, yes, you would have to use DICE ID APIs so that you can receive that proof, right? This proof
yes,
can be understood, and validated, right?
yes.
Yeah, correct.
Do you have a link like attach something like that to just to take a look at the API and how does it look like in real life?
Which the APIs?
API, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dice ID
So yeah,
APIs.
right, right. So that was my last slide here, right? So, just give me a second. So basically, diceid.com is just our website to
Mm-hmm.
tell you about capabilities, but we also have developer documentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have tutorials on how to use API, right? And if you don't want to use API, there is a batch issuance mode also, right? And for verification also, we have a tutorial. And those tutorials and other demos are also on our YouTube channel, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's where you can check it out. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we will be sharing the this presentation as well within the group, so you can also have a look. So Hitarshi, there is one more question in the chat
Sure.
that who is running the blockchain node for the DICE ID platform and what is their incentive to do so?
Right. Yeah. So currently, Wipro is running the blockchain nodes, right? And our incentive is to take this platform out to our customers, right? First ensure that adoption was there. So that's why you see the 1.2 million transactions, right? And the next step would be obviously to monetize it, right? So we have given some free transactions to our customers, who got onboarded till now, which are valid till certain date, December 2024. And the BGV services that we are going to provide are going to be paid services, right? So yeah, we will eventually make money on that. And since this is a private permission blockchain platform, right, on built using Hyperledger Indy, so there is no concept of gas fees here, right? So the only cost that we incur is the infrastructure cost of hosting those blockchain nodes, right? So there is no mining fees associated, right? And yeah, our incentive is that, by ensuring adoption and enough adoption, and then eventually monetizing the usage of the platform, will make money. Yeah.
So in this case, I think one more message in that because it's run by Wipro, so it's not decentralized yet, it means.
It is, yeah. So any blockchain solution, right? I mean, if you take even public blockchains like Polygon, so they are also being hosted. Majority of the nodes are being hosted by uh, you know Polygon, right? But coming to this construct here, right? So this by design, this is decentralized, right? So that's why we have two flexible deployment models, right? So if somebody is ready to spend the infrastructure cost of hosting their node and the other additional components, we are happy to do that, right? We can easily extend this blockchain network and add a fifth and a sixth node, right? So that possibility is always there. It's just that since this is the I would say first or second year of adoption, so people are using the APIs rather than having their own setup, right? But I'm sure that our large enterprise customers, right, who
Mhm.
have the budget and they will definitely go for the host your own deployment model, which will obviously be part of the DICE ID blockchain network, but as an additional node, right? So we are not, and there is no challenge in extending this network because there is no confidential data here, right? So we can easily extend this network to
So
other
what
parties.
what I understood, so Wipro is providing the infrastructure to hold this, but there is no any control to manage or manipulate this data or blockchain network, right?
Right. So that's what I said. No, that what goes on data is the structure of the credential, right? The metadata, right? And who signed and created that structure, right? But I mean, when we talk about changing data or manipulating data, that data is only going from the issuer to the holder and holder to the verifier, right? So the credential object that gets created has those the actual data embedded in it, right? So that is something which we do not maintain, or we don't own that data, right? So that data is provided by issuer, and it is sent to the holder as a credential. So there is no there is no scope for us modifying that data in between, right? Because that is sent directly from issuer to holder and holder to verifier over a secure channel. Obviously, we provide the technology rails to facilitate that exchange.
So again, let's say being a verifier, somebody want to ask to verify some credential. The control will be to the credential holder that whether he or she wants to share with the
Correct.
verifier rather
Yes.
than blindly sharing with
Correct.
the verifier, right?
Right. So they have to, hit the submit button to submit those credentials as proof, right? And the credential holder has that credential in their wallet, but that doesn't mean that they can change it, right? Because
Okay.
that is signed, digitally signed by the issuer, right? And it is following a construct which is recorded on blockchain, right? So the credential holder cannot change any value or the structure of the credential. If they do, the verification will fail, right?
Hmm.
So because the verifier is relying on the credential schema that was recorded on blockchain, it is relying on the public key of the issuer, which is on blockchain, right, to validate the credential, right? So it will not accept any other kind of proof, that the
Mhm.
holder constructs, or somebody in the man in the middle tries to construct, right? So that verification will fail.
Yeah, perfect. So the one more interesting question, I think, what are the problems DICE ID facing now, technically or other kind of issues you have
Yeah.
faced?
Correct. Yeah, so on the business front, one thing is to explain this concept, or evangelize, or make people understand how powerful this concept is, right? Because we are still in, largely using Web 2.0 technologies, right? Where, organizations are concerned by the problems that they face internally, right? And if you know, so the concept of credentials and how it is, how it can empower them, that is something which they fail to understand. Obviously, decentralization is little far ahead, right? So that is one challenge. And secondly, from a technical standpoint, nobody is ready to host, at least now, till now, the tech stack that is required for this for this to be, uh, you know, extended beyond these four nodes, right? So they are happy to use our SaaS, services, right, for credential issuance and verification. But to further extend this network and make it decentralized, right? Those are some of the challenges. And yeah, one more challenge is that we have to monetize the services. So that will, depend on what kind of use case gets implemented on top of it, right? Because if we are solving a business problem which is really hurting the business, or then only people will be ready to pay for it, right? So those are some of the challenges which I think any new technology or emerging technology platform is currently facing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So one more question over this. Can you please explain a bit more about white labeling solutions that were mentioned? Which element of DICE ID system can be white labeled? And the third question is, what is the business model for that? One-time fee or subscription model? Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, so white labeling means that, for example, we provide our mobile app, right? Now, what happens is typically business have their own mobile app, right? So they don't want the users to deal with another mobile app, right? So one way is that we enable deep linking between the business app and the DICE ID app. Just like you use, um, the payment wallets, right? Like Paytm or any other wallets. So you get redirected, you make a payment, and then you come back to the app. That is one option. But we provide, basically Node.js SDKs, which can be embedded into the mobile app itself, so that the credential management functionality for the holder can be provided within that, right? So that is one capability which they can embed in their application. Second is for issuance and verification. Again, if they want to host the components in their environment, right, or in their geography. So that is also something which we are open to. That is, so that deployment model. So in that, their end users may not know that they are using DICE ID, right? Or for that matter, they also don't need to know whether they are using credentials, right? So for the end user, it should be only the functionality that matters. So those options are there, and it will be a custom agreement, with that organizations in terms of, so there will be definitely one-time fee, and what we would want is ideally that that organization join this existing network, right? So that based on that, we are able to charge them for the credential issuances and verifications that they do using DICE ID, right? So that's the model for white labeling.
Yeah, thank you. Any other question? You can feel unmute yourself. You have any?
Yeah, I have a question regarding blockchain. So, does that mean that you created your own blockchain network? And if someone wants to participate, like to provide their computational resources and like host some nodes, it is able to, this entity is able to do so, right? It's not,
Right, yeah.
I mean, it's not built on top of something like on top of Bitcoin or something.
No, correct. Yeah, so as I
And
said earlier, the blockchain network is built using Hyperledger Indy. Hyperledger Indy is a permissioned, blockchain network, right? So, currently we have 4 nodes hosted by Wipro. Tomorrow, if a 5th node has to join this network, then there'll be some administrative activity to add that 5th node, right? So it's not a public network that anybody can join, right? And yeah, but we are open to that possibility, of adding a new nodes to the network if somebody wants to host it, right? So, and there is no need for, Bitcoin or Ethereum kind of network, because, the purpose of this network is to, store the credential definition, or the schema of the credential, right? And the DID and public key of the issuer. That's it, right? So we don't, there's no, actual credential data or, confidential information that gets propagated here, right? So this blockchain network's purpose is a little different from our typical blockchain use cases.
thank you.
Perfect. Anyone else? Any question? So yeah, I think personally, actually being here in Middle East, we need to. If I look into the credential for my education or in our team, that we have to go for each and every country. We have to go separately to verify these credential. I see this is a very good use case for them to use this, so that we save time and money for the verifying our means, especially the education certificates. It takes 2 to 3 months, and we have to wait for the resources to go through it. That where I see it's a good use case for that.
Right.
So having said that, I think it was, thank you all. It was a very interactive session, and I hope it was a fruitful session for all of you. And thank you, Hitarshi, again for your time and sharing your insights on the DICE ID. And
Thank you, Mood, for
as,
inviting me, and thank you all for attending the session.
as I
Thank you.
mentioned, we will be posting the deck, and I have shared the link of DICE ID in the chat. So we will be sharing the deck as well, and we sharing the contact information of Hitarshi if anyone wants to know more about the DICE ID. So, David, anything you want to add?
No, just thank you to everyone for dialing in, and thank you both Mulshankar and Hitarshi for organizing and presenting today. And this was great. Thanks everyone.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I'll be following up with an email with those links.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks
Thank
everyone.
you.